Fading Echoes is a landmark book in the series, at least by vague reputation. After what some may consider a slow start with the Fourth Apprentice, Fading Echoes truly begins the plot of Omen of the Stars. It has the first big focus on the Dark Forest and the first clues towards their plans and methods, along with the extended focus on Ivypaw and Dovepaw's dynamic, which is so striking that it inspired and continues to inspire more fan content than perhaps any other single relationship in the series. It's a big deal. But how close do our interpretations of such famous events match up to what actually happens in the text? Well, that we'll have to look inside to find. Fading Echoes came out on March 22nd of 2010, 4 months after The Fourth Apprentice and Shattered Peace. Yeesh, these books move fast. Well, at least this one was written by Kate Carey rather than Cherith Baldry, allowing it slightly more time to brew. However, this also means that, with the books being written concurrently, it wasn't possible for Kate and Cherith to read each other's work, either to keep things consistent, follow up on plot and character arcs, or otherwise. Cherith was also the one to write the last 2 books of the previous arc, Long Shadows and Sunrise, the only books concerning Hollyleaf and Ashfur's downfalls and the fate of the prophecy for a time. So Kate has some catching up to do. We'll just have to see how much of the information is used at all, and how much Kate begins with something new. First though, we'll do our quick check with the allegiances. Well, to start, Whitewing is back as a warrior since her kits have left the nursery. Also, in The Fourth Apprentice, when Graystripe and Millie's kits were moved to the apprentice den, someone forgot to add Millie back to the warriors, so she's here in Fading Echoes along with her kits, who are also new warriors: Briarlight, Blossompaw, and Bumbleflight. Sorry, what was that? I mean, first of all, I don't remember them being made warriors, and second, I can't say why right now, but it feels like Bumblepaw was supposed to get a different name. But hey, I'm probably just being silly. Bumbleflight it is! With all of this, ThunderClan has 26 listed warriors instead of 21. There are also 2 apprentices instead of 3, since Dovepaw and Ivypaw have replaced Briarpaw, Blossompaw, and Bumblepaw, and 3 queens instead of 4 since Whitewing left the nursery. Overall, no big changes this time around. The total speaking cast for this book is 73, 1 more than last book, and the top 10 of those cats have 69% of the lines, 1% less than last book. So doing great there. 45% of the cast are she-cats, but where The Fourth Apprentice gave 39% of the lines to their she-cats, Fading Echoes has 47% for theirs. Well done! Still not 50-50 split here, but more lines for the she-cats than she-cats in the cast is good. And with that out of the way, I am very excited to jump into the story, because this is where it really ramps up. And we waste no time getting into it, as the prologue opens up with Hawkfrost and Breezepelt fighting in the Dark Forest, while other members of the Afterlife, Tigerstar, Darkstripe, and Brokenstar, critique their work. Breezepelt seems eager to push himself further, and the 3 other Toms encourage this line of thinking, explaining that Crowfeather clearly never valued him, instead trying to crush him and make him weak. He betrayed his own clan and the others by taking Leafpool as a mate, but Breezepelt is a noble warrior and can rise beyond those beginnings. He continues his training after the very clear manipulations, and Hawkfrost is ordered to find another cat, a young she-cat apprentice who is ready to join the fight as well. Back in the living world, Dovepaw is still having guilt-fueled bad dreams about Ribbletail's death, and Ivypaw is worried about her, but Dovepaw doesn't feel like she can talk about it with anyone. Lionblaze and Jayfeather immediately ask her to check on the clans, this time letting Dovepaw see that 2 grieving RiverClan cats are walking towards the Moonpool, most likely Mothwing and Mistyfoot going to receive the latter's 9 lives. Jayfeather brushes past this and gets to work, but Dovepaw can't help being hung up on Leopardstar's death. Jayfeather does, however, stop to ease some of her emotion by explaining she's not responsible for Ribbletail's death, and it is instead destiny that leads all of them to each of their paths. Dovepaw and Ivypaw do some patrolling together, with Ivypaw already being much more excited than her sister, and they get to see the complete returned lake since the dam broke. Ivypaw ends up treading on a split stick, so Lionblaze throws the broken pieces out into the lake to avoid further injury. But as this causes Jayfeather to wail in pain, it's pretty obvious which broken stick this was. Mistystar comes by to formally announce her promotion, and Jayfeather takes the opportunity to look in on Mothwing's confusion during Mistystar's ceremony, considering she wasn't able to take part herself. Mistystar apparently learned at this point that Mothwing can't speak with StarClan, but she's a formidable healer anyway. Lionblaze also guesses at, and gets confirmation from Jayfeather that the broken stick was his, but he isn't willing to answer why he broke it. Lionblaze and Cinderheart take Dovepaw and Ivypaw for some tree climbing training, and during it, Dovepaw hears dogs chasing cats, including Sedgewhisker and WindClan, and she begs to help. Lionblaze tries to explain that they can't be close to the cats on the beaver journey now as they were then, but Dovepaw cannot understand why. Failing to convince her mentor, Dovepaw instead asks Ivypaw to sneak out with her that night. Ivypaw is upset to hear she needs friends in WindClan when she has friends here, but follows her dutifully regardless, and they reach the camp. They manage to call out to and speak with Sedgewhisker, but she seems reluctant to show weakness in front of them, and assures them that WindClan can take care of itself. Other cats approach, with One Star showing suspicion about how Dovepaw discovered the dog had chased their warriors, and Whitetail trying to insist that the journey is over and they are separate now. Breezepelt and Heathertail escort the two apprentices back, and Firestar chastises them both, asking for an extra word with Dovepaw specifically, to ask how she knew about the dogs, whether it was a dream from StarClan like the beavers, or something else. He then tells Jayfeather, Lionblaze, and Dovewing that he is fairly sure they are in a prophecy. The three then, already knowing this, explain to Firestar what their powers are, as best they can. After one more day of Ivypaw being sent on early patrols while Dovepaw got to sleep in, Ivypaw finally asks what's so special about Dovepaw, but Dovepaw tries to assure her they're equal. She hopes other cats don't start treating her differently from her sister. On a border patrol, Dovepaw notices Tigerheart's scent on their side of the border, but he covers it over before other cats can tell. He asks Dovepaw to please not mention it, saying he can explain himself at the gathering the next day. Of course, Jayfeather knows too, since he actually found Tigerheart at the border, but all three of them opt to keep quiet until they know more. To add insult to injury, Dovepaw is invited to the gathering while Ivypaw isn't, and she's clearly not happy about it. At that gathering, though, Dovepaw does finally get to speak with Petalfur, one of the few cats who shares her wish to be friends after the beaver journey's conclusion. She tries to speak to Tigerheart as well, but he either doesn't hear her or chooses to ignore her, and they're cut off by the meeting's start. The leaders share their news, and as usual, there's a mix of, "Wow, it's so great or terrible that we can be friends," and "Get off our border, scum!" So nothing especially unique happens. Dovepaw does get Tigerheart alone, eventually, and he says he can't say why he was at the border, and she has to trust him, but that ShadowClan isn't planning an invasion. He also seems to have wounds from battle training, he says. Meanwhile, Ivypaw is off hunting in a field with horses and meets a mysterious Tom who offers to help in her technique. She declares that she'll tell her sister Dovepaw about them, and the Tom, Hawkfrost, seems interested. Doesn't she like to do things by herself? She's not a shadow of her sister, after all. They work together for a little longer, and Ivypaw definitely seems to enjoy the experience, before she wakes up from the dream. Cinderheart is calling her because Blossompaw is being assessed and needs a partner for pair hunting. Blossompaw immediately complains that she has to work with Ivypaw, an untrained apprentice who can't even hunt like her sister can, but Ivypaw actually takes it in stride. Blossompaw tells Ivypaw to stay out of her way, but when Ivypaw catches a squirrel with the move Hawkfrost taught her, and Blossompaw fails to catch a rat, she at least agrees to include the other apprentice. The warriors all praise them both, but neither Blossompaw nor Ivypaw are really working together or enjoying each other's company by the time they get back. At least Blossompaw, Briarpaw, and Bumblepaw all pass their assessments. Ivypaw begins to tell Dovepaw about her dream and Hawkfrost teaching her to hunt, but is cut off by Lionblaze calling for Dovepaw again. Cutting over to her perspective, Firestar immediately asks her if she hears anything, and though this is starting to irk her, this time she does. There's a tree falling into camp. Everyone rushes to clear the dens, but Mousefur isn't willing to leave behind fresh prey, and Longtail isn't able to get her out in time. Briarpaw rushes in to get them both out, and at that moment, the tree falls. Mousefur is fine, but after Lionblaze lifts the tree itself to let them in, they are able to extract Longtail and Briarpaw's still bodies. Longtail is dead, but Briarpaw is still breathing, and Jayfeather will not rest until she's safe, and that includes demanding that Leafpool help. Whatever he may feel about her, she has expertise, and he needs another pair of paws now. From what Briarpaw was able to say, though, it sounds like she can't feel her back legs. Jayfeather is confused, considering her legs are only bruised, not broken. Also, Dovepaw's feeling horrible about not being able to save everyone, and Jayfeather and Lionblaze briefly discuss how much pressure Dovepaw has on her, being one of the three at such a young age. Leafpool also suggests to Jayfeather that he speak with Little Cloud, who apparently had a patient like Briarpaw before. Firestar agrees, but asks that he take Squirrelflight along, in case any other trees fall or dangers arise. Also, Purdy is trying to comfort Mousefur with her survivor's guilt, and it is very sweet. Jayfeather and Squirrelflight explain their situation to Little Cloud, and the latter tells them about a cat we never hear of anywhere else in the series, Wildfur, who was similarly paralyzed because of a broken backbone. He ended up dying because of a bad cough that kept forming in his chest, one he wasn't able to ease since he wasn't able to move from his nest. Jayfeather, hearing this, decides to invent and get her to work through exercises to prevent infection, and insists to himself that Briarpaw will live. He won't let StarClan take her. It's at this point that I would like to pause and add some additional context that we got recently. In an article released in 2020, Victoria Holmes explained that she had never planned for Briarpaw to survive the tree falling at all. She was meant to struggle, but then, based on realism for cats with severe health problems in the middle of the woods, she was going to die. However, as she was writing, a cousin of hers broke his neck and was paralyzed as well, hanging on the edge of life for weeks. And knowing that, Vicky couldn't let Briarpaw die from this. Some elements of this story can seem rushed or sloppy, such as Wildfur's sudden existence, but knowing the reason for Vicky to have written this story, much like Cinderpelt's predetermined death, it makes it a much more meaningful story to look in on. Okay, back to the book. Jayfeather determines for sure that her backbone is broken. He explains to her what he's learned from Little Cloud, and Millie immediately erupts into sorrowful wailing. Briarpaw, meanwhile, forlornly says she's never going to walk again, and Jayfeather agrees, apologizing and trying to comfort her. Blossompaw, Bumblestripe, and Briarlight are all named warriors, and Mulekit and Cherrykit cheer as Briarlight makes her way over to get herself prey. Meanwhile, Ivypool and Toadstep are getting along well and go off together bedding together, and Lionblaze takes a moment to demand Dovepaw use her power to see what the Shadowclan cats are doing by their border. Dovepaw finally gets upset that they use her as a tool, but is cut off since Ivypaw scampers in. She asks if Ivypaw has had another dream, but Ivypaw chooses not to tell her this time so she can finally have a secret. Dovepaw isn't doing too well either, though, because she asks Jayfeather and Lionblaze if she can tell Ivypaw about the prophecy, and they bring up Hollyleaf as a reason why they can't, before immediately shutting her down when she asks about Hollyleaf. Ivypaw meets Hawkfrost in her dreams again, this time seeking him out to plead for new training, in fighting. He encourages her not to tell Dovepaw about them, since she could just be stealing the moves she learns, and Ivypaw agrees. Oh, and for no particular reason, all of the apprentices and a lot of the warriors have a sparring session. Multiple cats notice Ivypaw is using advanced moves, some from RiverClan, but she refuses to explain any further, instead saying she forgot how to do them. Lionblaze and Jayfeather go off in private to discuss Tigerstar in the Dark Forest, not with Dovewing, because they haven't told her yet. They know Breezepelt is training with them, and Tigerheart, but have made no other progress, and decide to start watching cats, especially at gatherings, to see if they can pick up on anything. Oh, and at the Moonpool, Yellowfang tells Jayfeather something bad is coming. Jayfeather lets them in on the Dark Forest stuff they've known for moons, and Yellowfang decides they need to go into the Dark Forest together, along with Spotted Leaf. We learn some cats are fading, which is what happens when they've been in the afterlife so long that they are forgotten. And meet Brokenstar, who is not at all happy to see his old mother. Yellowfang calls Brokenstar a mistake, and Jayfeather wonders if that means he's a mistake too. But Yellowfang and Spotted Leaf assure him that he isn't a mistake, and both of his mothers love him. Brokenstar says they are welcome to tour his territory, if he can enter StarClan, that is. And since they refuse, so does he. They do see some cats viciously training, though, including Hawkfrost ordering a cat called Shredtail to rip into a cat called Snowtuft, right through the belly. And yes, all you Shocked Warriors fans, this is almost certainly when his famous scar was made in canon, not when he was alive. Tigerstar comes in too and says they're just training for fun, but also that no one can stop them from corrupting cats all over the lake. The trio refuse him and decide there's simply nothing they can do, heading back to StarClan. Back in camp, Lionblaze and Cinderheart go out together, and Cinderheart mentions how Ivypaw and Dovepaw are avoiding each other, which worries her and which Lionblaze had never noticed. They do drop the subject, though, and chase each other through the forest instead, teasingly. Cinderheart is actually a pretty consistent teasing and jovial presence through her many appearances in this book. Also, Lionblaze takes Dovepaw out, and when Jayfeather returns, they finally brief her on what the Dark Forest is. An increasingly annoyed Dovepaw also finally gets to meet Tigerheart again, and they catch up on what Dovepaw has seen of their other friends from the journey. but quickly they have to part again. In the Dark Forest, Hawkfrost tells Ivypaw that all the cats here are now her clanmates, and clanmates are everything, introducing her for the first time to other cats who live here, starting with Tigerstar. Tigerstar tells her that ThunderClan is in danger from ShadowClan, and Firestar is too scared of them to do anything about it. But it is essential that they take back the strip of land ThunderClan gave to them to avoid a war. Ivypaw promises to convince them, whatever she has to do. Because of this, she fakes a dream from StarClan and leads ThunderClan into a bloody war over a useless scrap of territory, making Jayfeather, Lionblaze, and even Dovepaw suspicious of her. ThunderClan uses their new tree climbing skills to fall down on the ShadowClan warriors. Ivypaw fights really well, even earning a compliment from Blossompaw, and she silently thanks Hawkfrost for training her. But in the end, Lionblaze accidentally kills Russetfur while she was taking one of Firestar's lives. ThunderClan wins, but it was a tragedy for everyone. And that is where the book ends. Okay, I have a lot to go over on this one because it too is a dense book, and dense with a lot of good, honestly. Let's do some small stuff first. The brothers, well, mostly Jayfeather, definitely aren't happy with their mothers, but by the end, Jayfeather has sort of forgiven both of them, in his own way, and comes to understand that they both love him. Cinderheart still has tidbits of being Cinderpelt sprinkled in, but she mostly gets to be an optimistic, teasing, compassionate, and insightful cat, taking up some leadership roles in her clan. The only issue I have with her is that we rarely get to see her as Ivypaw's mentor, or see their relationship, which seems like it should be important given Ivypaw's story is riding on her feelings of neglect and jealousy. Tigerheart, well, he gets more characterization than the last book, but that is mostly that he cared about the Beaver Journey crew, but not to the extent where he would seek them out like Dovepaw did, and that for some reason he is crossing into ThunderClan territory and asking Dovepaw to cover for him. He also promised he would explain himself in that regard, and did not, so, I mean, he's not looking great. But at least, for now, he doesn't seem malicious. That said, a lot of the clan culture in this book is exceptionally strong. We have Dustpelt working in some sort of official constructor capacity, Rosepetal and Foxleap having some sort of close connection, Petalfur and Sedgewhisker having distinct but recognizable reactions to the Beaver Journey reminders, Purdy comforting Mousefur over her survivor's guilt, and Molekid and Cherrykid cheering on Briarlight, among other things. It's definitely a cake carry book, because every moment oozes with character, and most characters do have a distinctive trait or two that is evident in their dialogue. Okay, now let's move to the bigger stuff, starting with Dovepaw. She is honestly a sweetie, and her struggles become arguably more compelling here than in the last book. Lionblaze, Jayfeather, and now Firestar are all demanding she use her power whenever they speak to her. She even mentions that "hear anything" has replaced "hello" as Lionblaze's default greeting. She deeply wishes she could have more agency, speaking with her friends from the Beaver Journey, telling Ivypaw about the prophecy, or avoiding special treatment by her clanmates, but this keeps being denied to her, and no one is able to, or willing to, properly explain why. Worse yet, she feels responsible for Rippletail's death, and later, Longtail's and Briarlight's injuries too, because she was put in charge as the powerful tool and wasn't able to save everyone. This isn't something she's able to share with anyone besides the three, since it's banned information, and Jayfeather and Lionblaze never reach out to her about it. She is very much an isolated cat in a bunch of sadness soup, but with several good reasons behind it. The only part I wouldn't say is narratively justified, but that could be, is Jayfeather and Lionblaze not reaching out when they know she's having a very hard time. But if you tied in their feelings about Hollyleaf, which they only mention once, it would be possible to justify this as not feeling comfortable being close to each other or Dovepaw. On the other hand, we have Ivypaw, who, in this specific book, also has a pretty compelling story. Because Dovepaw isn't able to explain herself, and so many cats are pulling her away and treating her differently, it makes sense that Ivypaw would be easily manipulated by someone who calls her special and gives her practical ways to show off how special she is with new moves. I wish Cinderheart's part in this was explored, or that she had a different mentor entirely, because, by the way she is characterized, it doesn't seem like Ivypaw would have anything resembling a neglectful mentor. But what is here works fine. I also like Blossompaw's part to play in this book. She is a dismissive bully to Ivypaw, with Toadstep actually being the only one shown as Ivypaw's friend for a single scene. But that means when Blossompaw finally does give Ivypaw a bit of praise, it matters to her a lot. That doesn't make them friends by any means, and I think that part is frequently exaggerated by the fandom, but it is useful for the narrative, and specific to the characters. Jayfeather, too, has some great times to shine in this book. Most of his journey is disconnected from the Dark Forest plot, other than that one scene where he gets to camera inside it, but he has his own narrative going on with Squirrelflight, Leafpool, and Briarlight. His work with Briarlight is one of the strongest examples in the series for his unstoppable passion for his patients, and it is this tragedy that pushes him to make up with Squirrelflight and Leafpool in order to get their help. Whatever he's feeling, he considers Briarlight's continued life more important. Millie's protective mother instincts over her are also what first shows Jayfeather how his mothers did love him. Of course, to me personally, I also feel that Jayfeather's line to Dovepaw about how she wasn't responsible for Rippletail's death because they're all bound by destiny is an important one. A lot of Jayfeather's life, from his position as a medicine cat to his place in the prophecy to the loss of his sister, has been, or felt, bound up in destiny. Almost as if that could be a theme of his to be dealt with and confronted later. But that's not a point for right now, is it? So let's move on to the last and, unfortunately, least member of the crew. Lionblaze. He sure is strong. He lifted a tree to save Longtail and Briarpaw, and he accidentally killed Russetfur in the final moments, which will probably have repercussions in the next book. But for the most part, he's just an object in the world to wonder about Jayfeather or tell Dovepaw to do things for them. He doesn't have a lot of consistent character or story, and honestly, his most humanizing moment was when he spent time off relaxing for an hour with Cinderheart. Maybe they could actually become friends in the future? Who knows? Finally, it's time to address the Dark Forest. It definitely comes up fully for the first time here, with us getting to see the active manipulation of Breezepelt and Ivypaw, along with the brutal training of cats in the background, with Shredtail and Snowtuft. But when Yellowfang, Spottedleaf, and Jayfeather came in, as brutal as the training was, Brokenstar and Tigerstar seemed ready to just have pleasant chats, and weren't all that forward about having any particular plan or issues with the StarClan cats. They didn't even make any attempts to attack. And on the lore side, wait, if StarClan cats can easily waltz into the Dark Forest, why can't the reverse occur? What's stopping them? And what was up with the fading? Does that mean the oldest cats in the field guide or the founders of the clans are all gone? And who all is in the Dark Forest, since apparently it's a large and bustling afterlife now? How many cats do they have? What are they planning to do? What can they do? Well, maybe it's a good thing that the book raises all of these questions. On character, plot, lore, and even theme levels, this book sets up a lot of building blocks that the arc, the past 2 arcs really, desperately needed. I know who all of our characters are, and I am excited to see them break down and or grow closer with time as they work out their issues and figure out what the enemy plans for them. I even care about our background cast, and several of them have noticeable ongoing struggles of their own for us to look forward to. I'll be honest, of the ones I've covered so far on Trip Through Time, this is my favorite book, outshining even The Darkest Hour. It is everything I look for in Warriors as a series, and I can only hope that all this beautiful characterization and potential is followed through on, because it could make one of the best arcs in the series. But we've got a while to go in our timeline before the 3rd book comes out, so we'll have to see how this story continues later, in a future episode of our Trip Through Time.